Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Women Serve 2. Today we have Janet Hudson with us. She has a nursing career that has spanned 42 years, which 13 of that was served in the Air Force, the Great Force. I heard the military has sent her to get her master's in nurse anesthesiology or nurse what
Nurse
nursing.
anesthesia or
I'm
nurse
just
anesthetist. It's okay.
yes.
It's hard to say.
Okay, I was like, oh my God, it is one of those days. Lord forgive me. All right, which she has practiced for 32 years. Her husband and her deployed to Desert Storm, and she later developed many medical issues, also known as the Gulf War Syndrome, from environmental exposures, which is something that we are going to be discussing today. Not wanting to take any strong drugs, she searched and used many holistic modalities for healing. Some help, nothing took to the issues away completely until she discovered a technology company called LifeWave, which is another thing that we will also discuss. And then through their product, she was able to get her body back into homeostasis and the issues went away. So, Janet, thank you so much for being on this episode today.
It's my privilege, Brittany. Thank you for having me.
One of the things that I like to start with is I like the women to tell us about their military journey and why they joined, what they did, their experiences, and just overall, like, their story.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Well, I come from a military family. My dad was 20 years retired Army, and he honestly didn't think that the Army treated women very well. So he told me if I was going to go in the military to please not go in the Army, which wasn't a problem because I ended up marrying somebody who went into the Air Force. So once I started my nursing career with a 2-year RN, an associate degree RN. And once I got my bachelor's degree, then I went ahead and joined the Air Force. And I really anticipated on staying and retiring from the Air Force. I don't think I really answered the question completely. So, what made me want to join? Well, it sounds corny, but I really felt the patriotic need to go into the service. I think because so many of our family served, it just felt like the right thing to do. And then my husband was already in, so I just really felt compelled to bring some nursing to the Air Force. So that's why I joined. The other thing was I was moving around with him all the time. And then, you start a new job and you're at the bottom of the pay scale, you're at the night shift, all that kind of stuff. So that was another reason to, keep my same pay and rank and stuff as I moved around. So that was the other reason. So when I went in, we actually got stationed at Myrtle Beach first. I know Myrtle Beach is no longer a base, but back then it was. And we deployed from Myrtle Beach to Desert Shield, Desert Storm back in 1990. Stayed there about 8 months, and I ran the emergency room in the Air Transportable Hospital. And it was a very, stressful but interesting time dealing with the whole buildup, getting everybody ready for the actual war part. And then we were very blessed. We did not have a lot of casualties during that war that came to our hospital. We were the closest medical place from Kuwait. So we were with the A-10 Warthog planes that the enemy called flying death. I didn't like those planes at all because they were very slow, loud, and did a lot of damage. So anyway, but we were very blessed. We mostly had a lot of sports injuries, those kinds of things, because there's a lot of sitting around waiting for the buildup and everything to happen before the actual war started. So interestingly, while we were there, actually before we went, they gave us a lot of things to take that they thought medication-wise would help prevent as much damage if we were chemically attacked. So they gave us things like anthrax and other medications. And then we were exposed to some things over there, especially they started burning the oil fields, and they were extremely thick in the air where we were. It seemed like it was nighttime 24/7. There was so much tar in the air. So inhaling, ingesting all that through our skin eventually led me to be really sick once we came home from Desert Storm. It took about a year for things to start showing up. And I had everything from sleep disturbances, colon issues, nerve pain in my arms and legs, muscle and joint pain. I developed 2 different autoimmune issues. One dealt with the thyroid and one dealt with that muscle joint pain. And, nobody really knew what was going on, which was really very frustrating, because you're thinking, why do you have all these different issues, at the same time? And finally, the government said, oh, yeah, there's this whole syndrome of issues that Gulf War veterans deal with that they finally called Gulf War illness or Gulf War syndrome. So, and at that point, after I did get out of the military, then the Veterans Administration did give me disability for a lot of the issues that I had, which I would have just rather not had the disability and not had the issues. Oh, yeah. And in nursing, especially when I was in anesthesia, I'm dealing with really strong drugs and big needles, and I didn't really want to use those things in my healing process. I wanted to try to stay away from the drugs, especially narcotics, which are so not good for you. So I always tried to look for ways to heal that were more natural. I did things like acupuncture and deep tissue massage and chiropractic care, lots of supplementation, tried to eat really healthy and, get a good amount of exercise and good quality water and all those things to try to naturally do better. And I also had used a machine called a Beamer. It's spelled Bemer. And in real simplicity terms, you lay on a mat and it has pulse waves that go into your body that actually increase the circulation in your microcirculation. And that really helped, especially the nerve pain that I had in my legs and stuff. But if I was away from that machine for more than 3 or 4 days, the pain would start ramping up again. And then just about a little over 2 years ago, I found this company called LifeWave. And to be honest with you, I was very skeptical until I really researched the company and looked at the studies. All of their technology is not put out without really good studies that are what we call double-blind studies and not done by the company. Somebody separate is doing the studies. So I dug into that and really learned about it and finally realized that what the patches do is kind of amazing. So most people understand that when they go out into the sunlight, there's a wavelength of light that goes into their body, and it starts a whole process of making vitamin D. And most people understand that. That's how our body can make its own vitamin D. Well, these patches actually use our infrared body heat as the source of the wavelength of light. So we are all beings of light. We have this source of light that comes off our body about a good 3 inches. We can't see it with the naked eye, but like night vision goggles, if you watch a movie with night vision goggles, you see those glowing men. That's your infrared body field. That actually activates with that patch, and a specific wavelength of light goes in there. And the one patch that has really helped me is called X39, and it actually will start producing stem cells, in your body again. Because I didn't know this as a nurse. I know what stem cells are, and I know that they can become any cell in your body and they regenerate your body. But I didn't realize they decrease so much with age, just like everything. And either it decreases or it sags as you age, right? Those are the two choices you have. But stem cells go down really significantly. They go down about 50% by the time you're in your 30s. And by the time you're my age at 65, they're about less than 10%. And that's why people visibly show aging and then also just start having medical issues as they're aging because their organs are having some issues and stuff. So once I found this patch and started wearing it, I had some amazing results. Some things really quickly, like my sleep improved really fast. The joint muscle pain went away really quickly. Things took a long time with nerves, and I had an issue with my back where I had that nerve pain down my leg that most people complain about. I had that and had 2 ablations on it and was still having pain. So it took about 7 months for the nerve pain in my arms and legs to go away without even having to use that Beamer all the time. So I am just really excited about that technology. And I was not looking for a business at all when I started using the product. But as a practitioner, and I just could not help people with it. It's like you see so many people suffering, and I just really want to help them. So my husband and I both are doing this business together and trying to help people um, get to a better state of health. And also, if they're interested in building a business, also to help with their wealth. So that's where all that whole path of being in the military and going through all that, you're when you go through trials and tribulations like that, you a lot of times think, okay, Lord, why is this happening? Why were you going through all this? And then you look back and think, well, if I didn't have these issues, I never would have found this technology that I can help people with.
Mm-hmm.
So as I retired from anesthesia last year, now instead of those strong drugs and big needles to help people, I use them with patch technology. I help them. So that's it in kind of in a
So,
nutshell.
yeah, that's crazy. So, like, you tried all these things, and I have like so many questions just from that little tidbit of your story already. So, the government diagnosed the Gulf War syndrome. So, what did the VA or the government do to help you get better? Did they just be like, well, why don't you try, X, Y, and Z? Or they were like, here's just your disability. Let's move on.
Good question, Brittany. I think back then they primarily you got your disability, true. So the money, for helping with these other modalities I was doing, that was good. Um, but really, their main treatments were drugs. I mean, that's really what they knew what to do. I think now that's improved a little bit. You can, through community cares, you can get acupuncture and different things done that are a little more Eastern medicine kind of things rather than just all Western medicine. So things that have definitely come along. But when I was having all these issues in the 90s, they just wanted to medicate me, and I didn't want to be medicated. So that's how that went.
So you went through all of these different trials besides medication. So non-medicated options. Like, what made you try the ones that you did? Like, because I know you have a nursing background, but was it from just your expertise in nursing and you're like, oh, this has helped people in the past? Or you were like, I'm willing to try anything?
It was probably the second. I'm willing to try anything non-medicine wise to try to feel better. So, and a lot of, I think when people have a lot of illness, there's a lot of things that your mind can also do for you. So if you are in a positive state and looking for things to improve versus really being focused on all of that issues and those pains that you're having. So spirituality for me, my faith is really important. Getting good exercise was really important to help maintain or decrease some of the pain. So yeah, you just try to find the things that work for you, and a lot of things help. They really did. Um, but the symptoms always came back to the same point they were. It just didn't stay in that bitter spot for very long. And that was the frustrating part. And then I just was networking with another business we have, and I talked to a gentleman out of Texas who was using the patch technology. He broke his ankle really bad, and he kept saying he jumped out of an airplane and landed wrong, but he actually fell off a ladder. That was his joke about how he broke his ankle so bad. But anyway, he was actually going through several surgeries and found these patches and then had much better healing. So as a nurse, that fascinated me because the wound healing, like if somebody has surgery and has an incision or bruising or any of those kinds of things, stem cells really can make the healing process really speed up. So, and really minimize scarring too. So all that really intrigued me, being a nurse, I guess. But I think anybody who sees that, and especially is going through any kind of a procedure and wants to heal quicker, it's a good thing.
Well, I'm glad you stumbled upon that because that I've never heard anything like that. That's amazing. And I definitely do want to dive more into like that business model. But let's still kind of talk about your military experience because you said you were deployed with your husband. Now, did he develop very similar situations? Like, how did that deployment go, being mill to mill and especially in Desert Storm?
Well, interestingly enough, the issues with Gulf War illness or Gulf War syndrome didn't seem to hit everyone. So we were given the same things. So for whatever reason, we were exposed to the same toxins. What for whatever reason, some people would get ill and some people wouldn't. I even eventually developed colon cancer, which also gave me some more disability because that's one of the things they said was attributed to the burning oil fields. So I don't really know why he didn't. I'm just very happy he did not get sick. And that seemed to be kind of maybe 30 to 40% of the people we deployed with developed some kind of issues, whether it be cancer or all the things I described. A lot of people had post-traumatic stress. Probably there's some of that there. I worked through that, leaving our 2-year-old with relatives in Florida for those 8 months was very tough. So I'm sure there's some post-traumatic stress for us and also for our daughter, because she acted like she was having a great time in Florida. But, when we came back, there was definitely some struggle there as she reacclimated back to being with us again. So, yeah. So those things are difficult.
So, was your husband the same career field? Like, how did you guys both link up as far as deployments go?
Gotcha. A little bit sticky because I was an officer and he was a gentleman. He was enlisted. So, but when we
Mm,
went, we were married when I came into the Air Force, and they took me because they needed nurses. So they didn't. That officer enlisted thing was not an issue. It was a little hard there because we're a very affectionate couple, and we really couldn't be affectionate in
mm.
public because you just couldn't, just couldn't because it was officer enlisted thing.
Right.
So we were about 10 tenths apart on this big tent city that we were at in King Fahd International Airport. And he was there with, I think, about 10 or 11 other men in his tent. And we had, I think, 5 or 6 in our officer tent. So I felt really bad because you could just imagine what that tent smelled like with 12 men in it in the heat. And, I'll just leave you with that picture. So yeah, he would come to my
Wonderful
tent
image.
sometimes just to get away from the smell. Yeah, it was bad. Yeah, there were a lot of married couples there in the hospitals, particularly that were both deployed there. So that part wasn't so different from what other people were going through. But it was a little strange, to be so close together, but couldn't really be together. So, but we were able to spend some private time together. Our chief nurse and assistant chief nurse came up with this wonderful idea. They had like a small trailer with 2 bedrooms and a bathroom in between, and that was where they lived. And they would give up that trailer. I don't even remember what, say it was Wednesdays. And people from the hospital that were couples would sign up for time in their trailer. So it was just a blessing to just be away from everybody and to be able to talk about our family and just, de-stress from everything going around. So it was not very much fun when we came back the next day and everyone's looking at you and saying, "Did you have a good time?" So it was a little bit,
Mm. Oh,
strange. They're
yeah.
like, yeah, they called it the Love Shack book calendar. So yeah, it was interesting.
You also mentioned that you left your 2-year-old daughter with your family. Like, how did you guys come to that decision? How was it for you being, the woman and being a mom and being a caretaker? And how did it just kind of affect, that whole dynamic, especially being in the military?
Well, if you're both in the military, you have to have a plan. If you're both deployed somewhere at the same time for your children. So of course, we had that plan. But when you look back into the 1990s, in the military, we didn't go a lot of places, right? So that was very unusual for both of us to get deployed. I never thought it would happen. Nowadays, I think if you're both active duty, your chances of both being deployed are pretty good because there's so many things going on around the world that people get deployed to. So we were surprised, but we dealt with it because it's what we had to do. Um, we had a plan where our family would come up and get our daughter and take her down to Florida. And it just so happened my sister was coming up on vacation. We lived in, like I said, in South Carolina. So she came up, she got our daughter, got her all situated. And because it was really a rapid thing. We found out Bob was gone in a week, and I was gone about 2.5 weeks later. So we didn't have a lot of time to prepare. We just had to make sure that my sister was going to come get her, and they took her down there, and she spent time with my parents and Bob's sister, and she had a blast. She really acted like she was having a good time. She did go through measles while we were gone, so I kind of felt bad for my mother-in-law who was taking care of her at the time. And she finished getting potty trained. She was pretty much potty trained when we sent her, but she finished up with that. And so Bob's mom was very proud that she potty trained Jessica. So that was kind of cute. We were able to, communication wise back then, everybody now is so used to cell phones and, you can WhatsApp and do all these ways to contact people. We didn't have that back then. They did finally, after quite a while, they set up some phones, and we had some short amount of time, like 5 minutes once a week, where we could call home and talk to her. But then I guess it's a blessing. At the time, I didn't think it was a blessing. My husband volunteered me to be on Good Morning America because this war was the first.
Awesome.
I'm not really awesome when you're having to do it, but I was a little bit like, what? You did what? You're supposed to not, you volunteer your wife to make brownies or something. You don't volunteer for national TV. But he did. So, and the reason for that was they were interviewing, it was Thanksgiving week. They were going around to different bases, and they were interviewing women in the military. And one thing they were focused on was this was the first war where women who were married with children could go. So before, like in the Vietnam War, women could serve, but they couldn't be married. So this was the first time that happened. So that's the main reason I was interviewed, to find out about that. Don't ask me what I said. Unless I look at the tape, I can't remember. It was just a big blur. But what was great about that,
that was going to be my question.
Yeah, it was just like, of course, they ask things, they're like, well, are you in separate tents? I'm like, well, of course we're in separate tents. Just silly questions, but that I remember. And then they asked something about, well, if the military said one of you could go home, which one would go? And I said, well, it really wouldn't be up to us. It would be up to the military to say who they needed the most at the time. That's who would go. They wouldn't, we wouldn't have that decision to make. So Bob, of course, would send me, but that would be up to the military. Do they need a nurse more, or do they need somebody that was working on the airplanes and the electronics and stuff? So, yeah.
Dang, that's crazy. Like, I never realized that was the first war where women could deploy if they were married. It was crazy to me to really think about.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays it's
so you guys get. Yeah, it's like second nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like almost mind-blowing now that you say it. I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah, it was quite a while ago. I can't believe it's been over 30 years. Yeah, long time.
So you guys get done being deployed. Now, how quick were your symptoms? Because I know you said you wanted to potentially be in for a career, but you got out at 13 years. What was that process like? What did you develop the symptoms and you're like, they medically discharged you and then you decided to go to school, or what happened?
No, actually, I applied to go to anesthesia school through AFIT while I was in Desert Storm and got accepted. So when I got back from Desert Storm within about a year, I actually started school. So for my master's degree in nurse anesthesia. I started having symptoms probably about a year or so after I got back. So during school, and you attribute it to stress. It's a very challenging school. You just attribute it to stress and all things. But I had such weird, different things. I'm like, this is not stress or something going on. So anyway, I finished my degree. I started out in the University of Texas Health Science Center for all my classwork, and then I went to California to Travis Air Force Base for my clinicals. And I guess they liked me because I stayed there for another 4 years after I graduated. So one day I was a student, I graduated. The next day I was an instructor teaching students. So that was interesting. But I loved teaching anesthesia, so that was fun. And I had planned to retire, to be honest with you, but sometimes life throws you a curveball. A couple things happened at once. One of them was the chief nurse of the Air Force came to our small base. I was stationed in South Dakota at that point, and we had a little bit of time one on one with her. And the main question I wanted to know was, I was just selected for major, and I knew once I got major to get to lieutenant colonel, I had to leave my field of anesthesia that they spent all this money training me for, and run a desk and manage people somewhere. That was the only way you could make rank. So I asked her, is there ever going to be a clinical track for rank advancement? Because you're losing people that have all the experience to turn them into managers. And she said, no, that will never happen. And I was like, oh, I loved doing anesthesia. I absolutely loved it. I loved the art of it. I loved taking care of people and, getting them through and having them have great results. I just really, really enjoyed it. So that really kind of upset me. And then about a week later, my dad died very unexpectedly, at only 62. So those two things made me really sit down and evaluate, is it more important to retire and spend another 7 years with the Air Force? Or is it more important to be closer to family and my mother, and help take care of her since my dad passed away? So we made the decision to get out, and we actually moved to Maryville, Tennessee, and we love it here. It's a town outside of Knoxville, and finished raising our kids there. We had another child when right after I graduated from anesthesia school. We had a son, so we raised them here, and we don't regret that decision to get out. I thought a little bit about doing the reserves, but when you're working full time and finishing raising two children, I thought, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. So I never did do that.
Yeah, that is definitely a lot. And, I know it's hard, but sometimes, yeah, you have to make those decisions for your family. I had an interview with another woman who got out and she was very close to retiring, but her husband had cancer.
Oh.
And she doesn't regret it. And sometimes, you are made to deal with those tough decisions, but you still continued to do nursing. So was that an easy transition for you to go military medical to civilian medical?
I think for a lot of people that get out of the military, it's a really hard transition, especially if they're not doing what they were doing in the military. It's just very, very stressful for them. I've seen that with a lot of people that I know. For me, I was still doing the same thing, so it really wasn't as stressful. I came from a really small hospital in South Dakota practicing where we did all the OB and all the surgeries, and there was just two nurse anesthetists doing everything. And then I go to a hospital that has a lot of anesthesiologists and just very few nurse anesthetists. So that part was probably more stressful than anything, just dealing with that change and not having my full practice of anesthesia. Like the anesthesiologist did the OB at that hospital at that time. They don't anymore. Everybody does it, but at that time they only did it. So I was really a little sad about losing that because I love doing OB anesthesia. But over time, you focus on what you can do, and I could still do regional, which at spinals, epidurals, those kind of thing, nerve blocks, and take care of patients. So yeah, it was not really a hard transition as far as my career, but I can tell you what was really hard. Having been a military child and then marrying somebody in the military, going in the military, I was used to wherever we went, you formed bonds with people really quickly in the military because you only have a certain amount of time to be with these people and they become your fast friends. And I have some now that I've known my whole life or since my military life. And what was really weird is in the civilian world, it's just not like that. It seems to take a long time to make those friends and those connections. We got involved with our church and our kids' sports things and stuff. So, I mean, we did, but that camaraderie, that I don't know, that bonding thing that military people seem to have is just not there with civilians. So that part was probably the hardest part for me.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that because, and one thing I also noticed too is, being out now, the bonds that I had with people in the military, they're still some of my best friends to this day,
Absolutely.
despite not seeing them for years. I know if I could call them and I need them, like they're there in a heartbeat. And so the bonds that are formed in the military, they're true lifelong relationships.
They definitely are. That was the hardest part, leaving for that part.
Hmm. So you did, because what was it, 32 years? And you said you found this new technology. Did you retire and decide to focus on LifeWave? Like, is that like a franchise type thing? Like, what kind of business model is that? And what made you decide to essentially retire and focus on this?
Good question, Brittany. I was not looking for a business. I already had one doing something else. And I was going to retire a year from when I started this business. I had planned to retire. 42 years of nursing was enough, I decided. So I was 63 at the time, or 64 almost. So I'm like, yeah, it's time. And I started using the product, and like I said, I wasn't looking for a business. But when I had such amazing results, and my husband had some really amazing results, I just really felt compelled. Spent a lot of time kind of arguing with myself because I didn't really want another business. But I thought, my goodness, this is life changing for people. How can you not help them with that? So, and I really have a heart for veterans. There is a lot of, I just talked about one of our patches, but we have other patches too. But they also help with post traumatic stress, with anxiety. People on the spectrum with different issues can help with the symptoms of what's going on with them. So I felt really compelled after about 3 or 4 weeks on the patches. I'm like, okay, we need to do this. My husband and I sat down and powwowed about it, and prayed about it, and decided this is what we need to do. So I had already planned to retire, but I had planned to just volunteer more and, do those kinds of things that I could never do before because of my schedule. And I am doing those things too. We're part of a veterans group where I serve on a board that helps women with breast cancer pay their bills. So I'm still doing those things because the model that this business is with is direct sales network marketing. So you do not have to do it full time. You can do it in your nooks and crannies. Probably the most time I spend is networking, telling people about this. And the other part of the business really doesn't take that much time. What's exciting about LifeWave is they are 20 years as a company, and almost nobody has heard of them. And part of the reason for that is I know part nobody's probably heard of them. Um, David Schmidt is the inventor, CEO of the company, and he was working with the Navy SEALs. And he was asked if he had anything technology wise that would help with energy, keeping them sustained. And he was working with the mini submarines and stuff. So when they would deploy, 2 or 3 days at a time, that they weren't taking things like caffeine and amphetamines to stay awake. So he designed an energy patch that worked really well for that, for sustained energy, and also helping them get their stamina back after they got back. So that worked really well. And then 9/11 happened, and the military really went to focus on terrorism, not on technology. So he was able to take that technology that he invented and take it and make it a business in the civilian world, which he did. And that was 20 years ago this year. And he started with that patch, went out to the sports world, Olympians, professional athletes, collegiate athletes, all using this energy patch. It's so funny because when I first heard about the company and I heard that story about where it was developed and where it went to, I was like, oh my God, in 2004, we were watching the Olympics, the Summer Olympics, and Michael Phelps and the whole swim team, they were doing a relay. And I looked at my husband and I said, why are they all wearing these Band-Aids? That is so weird. They were wearing energy patches. They just look like little round Band-Aids. And it's a two patch system. So they had them on their body. And I'm just like, that is so weird. But that's what they were. They were the energy patch. And then over the years, he designed different patches that were targeted for special things like sleep and pain. But he knew that the holy grail of age reversal and homeostasis in the body was stem cell therapy. So he knew that if he could get that patch to elevate a copper peptide, a specific one in our body, it would turn your stem cells back on. Because they've known for over 50 years that that can happen, that there is a copper peptide called GHK. And not to get too technical, but that turns on stem cells, makes new stem cells. It resets genes. It does all this amazing stuff in your mitochondria, which is your energy source in your cells. So it took him 10 years and about $4 million, but he did design that. It was launched in 2019. So from 2018, where we were a sleepy company, somewhere mid 20 million range for the company, till last year, where we went over 400 million in sales in 5 years because of that stem cell activating patch X39. So it can do a lot of the things that those separate patches do. It helps with sleep, it helps with inflammation, it helps with pain. So sometimes you just need that one patch instead of multiple patches. Some people need more than one. But it does really work well just even by itself. It does sometimes take time. That's probably the hardest thing I have with people is they want instantaneous results. And I'm like, okay, you're 65. How many years did it take you to get in the shape you're in? You need to give it some time for the stem cells to build up and really start working on what needs to happen in your body. And God made our bodies really amazing. They know, those cells know where to go, whatever it needs it the most, and then starts working on other things. So it may not be the things you're looking for first that it's working on, but definitely making changes in your bodies. And it's all done with studies, so we know it's really working, and it's FDA registered. It's not FDA approved. I get that question all the time because that's for drugs. Technology is not approved. It's just registered as a medical device. So it has that. And we work really close with the FDA. They know all about us. They know what we're doing. They know that there's no stem cells in the patch. I had somebody who's with her religion. She's like, I can't take stem cells. I'm like, you're not taking anything through the patch except a wavelength of light. There's no drugs, no stem cells are going into you. It's just a wavelength of light.
Can you have multiple patches on at the same time, or is it you only have one at a time?
Generally, you only wear one of the stem cell activating patches at a time, and most of our patches are worn for 12 hours. But you can wear other patches. So it just depends on, sometimes I'll wear the energy patch. It also burns calories. So if I'm on vacation and I know I'm not eating like I should be, I'll wear the energy patch to help burn some extra calories. 500 calories extra a day might make a difference between gaining weight and not gaining weight. So I do that. It also opens up your body to let things work better, the energy patch does. So yes, you can wear more than one at a time. Some people definitely do that all the time. They wear, a lot of people with a lot of pain issues will wear the stem cell activating patch and then wear another patch called EON. It's spelled AEON because it decreases 5 kinds of inflammation. So while those stem cells are building up, having some time to do that, then this EON patch will maybe help with pain because it's relieving some inflammation issues. And also kind of balances the brain and decreases anxiety. So I kind of want to stick it on every teenager and young adult that in our world right now, it seems like they're all so anxious. So like stick that Eon patch on them.
I know. I was like, maybe I should invest in some of these patches and try them out. So, what are some common questions that you get about this company and these patches? Like, what are like the most common questions that you tend to get?
How long do you wear them, which is 12 hours a day? And they're like, well, why don't you wear them all the time? Because when you're signaling something in the body, if you signal it constantly, there's a process called attenuation where it'll just stop responding as well. So, in order to get the best bang for your patch, you want to just wear them about 12 hours a day. The other question I get is, are they waterproof? Like, can I shower with them or swim with them? You can absolutely shower with them. You want to make sure they're not placed on anything that's really hairy, because then they won't adhere really good. But interestingly enough, if people have an issue, it's a really good glue that they're used, a 3M glue. But if people have sensitivities or they don't really want to stick them on their skin, you can put them onto your shirt or your blouse. It's still going to work because your infrared body field comes off you about 3 inches. So it's still going to work. And a lot of people will take the we've never tested on animals, but they'll take the patch that's used off themselves and place it on their animal, on their collar, or on their little thing that's hanging down, their identification thing. And they have amazing results with the patches that are even used. So it's just really kind of cool.
Dang, that's crazy. I would have. You're just like blowing my mind about these patches.
Well, you're not the only one, Brittany. Most people either they really think, oh, this cannot be true. And that really was my first thought. Like, how can it help all these issues? But it's just really amazing science. It's probably a little ahead of its time. When people look back at things that were developed that changed the world and changed their lives dramatically, that things that we never thought were possible. And that's kind of what this technology is. It's just a little ahead of its time. But the company, the inventor, is always working on different things. There'll be other things that come out in our company that aren't patches, that will accentuate healing. Something we have coming out soon is he really believes in certain supplementations to help your stem cells work and function even better. And he gives us some ideas of what those are, like the names of them, and maybe sometimes I'll say how much to take, but not the brands and all that. So we've been asking him, can you not formulate something that has all this stuff in it so we're not taking all these separate supplements? And he has done that. He's done it at daytime and at evening time. It's not launched yet. It should be out hopefully in this next few months. Sometime this year. It's definitely coming out, but I'm hoping in the next few months I'm ready to have it not be taken separate supplements. So things like copper and zinc and those kinds of things that you take that help your stem cells.
How can someone get a hold of these patches? Do they have to go through like a seller like yourself? Is there a website? Do you do consultations to figure out what patches may help certain people?
Great question. I do. And that's really how I love to talk to people, is to find out what their issues are and see how we can best help them. So I like to do a consultation. They can order through my website, but I prefer for them to talk to me first and let's do that together. So yeah, we do have websites. So because it's a multi-level marketing company, some people have a negative connotation of multi-level marketing, direct sales. It's honestly what we do in life all the time. You go to a restaurant you really love, you tell everybody about it. You go to a movie you love, you tell everybody about it. You just don't get paid, right? With network marketing companies, they're almost always really great products or services, but you're cutting out the middleman, and then they're paying us to be the voice, to be the people that are spreading the news. So it's just really a brilliant marketing thing. And it's not, I get, is this a pyramid? I'm like, well, what's a pyramid to you? And they're like, that scam where it's a pyramid. I'm like, okay, a pyramid scam is money being exchanged without services or product. That is the definition of a pyramid scam. In business, every business is a pyramid, right? There's people at the top of the company, and then there's people going all the way down in any business that you're doing, right? I mean, everybody has the president of the company or the CEO, and then people that work manager wise, and then the workers. I mean, it's just the way it is. It's that way in a hospital or wherever. So I get those kind of questions. It's important to drink a lot of water. Our body, for a lot of reasons, our body, we don't drink enough water generally, and our bodies need that. And for the stem cell patch to work well, they need a lot of good water. What are their usual questions? Those are usually the typical ones. Where to place them. The packaging that you get tells you several places that you can place them. that is where they did the studies. So they had a standardized placement for the studies, and you absolutely can put them there. But with the stem cell activating patch, you can actually put it anywhere. So a lot of times, psychologically, if someone hurt their knee or their hip or their shoulder, they'll put the patch there. It's working throughout your whole body. Doesn't really matter where you put it. Um, so, like in the summertime, I usually, if I'm swimming, it's under my swimsuit somewhere because I don't want it to come off. If you're in water for long periods of time, it may come off. So I always put it somewhere that's, suit's pressing against my stomach, so it's not going anywhere. So that kind of stuff. But okay, those are really the general questions. And then they say, well, how long is it going to take to work? And I'll say, well, I don't know. And I honestly don't. Some people are one patch wonders. You stick a patch on them and they're like 10, 15 minutes later, like, my pain's gone. What's going on? This is really bizarre. Some people take months to see the results they're looking for. So I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know. I just know that they are working because there are studies proving that they're working. And you just need to give it enough time for the things to change that need to happen.
Yeah, unfortunately, we do live in that instant gratification type society. But I think one of the good benefits about this product is that you do have the studies.
Yes.
And you can't really argue against studies.
That's true.
Because the evidence is right there.
Yeah. For people who really, really want to know all about especially the stem cell activating patch, there's a website called startthe39now.com. That website has the studies, it has the patents. You can read the whole patent if you want to. It has before and after pictures that really tell the story of how this works. A lot of people show changes in their hair and the way their hair grows and quicker. Some people actually get more hair. The hair color changes over time back to their natural color. So sometimes women like that. Sometimes they don't, like they've gone all gray and they're like, I kind of liked my gray hair. And then they're going back to I just saw a picture today. This lady has beautiful blonde hair now. And she was totally gray 2 years ago. So, interesting.
Wow.
And they also they build muscle, they help bone, so osteoporosis, those kinds of things help prevent. And they lift things in your face and diminish wrinkles because you're flooding your whole system, especially your skin, with collagen. Not something you're drinking or taking, but it's happening through the patch technology. So after I'd been on the patches, maybe 3 months, I met with a group of women that I don't see all the time, and they're like, so what you doing? I'm like, what you mean? I had lost some weight on the patches, so I thought that's what they were referring to. It's not a weight loss product. I think if you have a lot of inflammation issues, the stress hormones make you hold on to weight. So once that is going down, the weight just came off. I mean, I had to change my pant size and everything. But they were talking about my face. They thought I had gotten injections or Botox or fillers, or, they're like, you look great. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm wearing this patch. They're like, you got to be kidding me. I'm like, no, I'm not kidding you. I haven't done anything. I haven't even gotten a facial. So,
Wow. Okay. Like, you are definitely selling me on these patches. So for anyone who is also being sold on these patches, how can they get in contact with you? How can they get this consultation to figure out what patches they should get and work through that whole situation?
Sure. They can email me at janethudson4health, FOR health.com. So it's JanetHudsonForHealth.com. So janethudson4health.com. They can also text me at 865-604-0895, and I'll get back with them as soon as I can. That's really the two best ways to get a hold of me. I don't usually give out my URL to order because I really want to talk to people before they just order. I want to be a partner with them, to go through the process with them and help them and answer questions. I want them just to order product and not have help with it.
I love that because it builds that trust, because a lot of people will just sell just to make money, and you genuinely do want to help people feel better and create that healing, which is something a lot more people should definitely implement into their lives.
Well, I appreciate you
So,
saying that.
Janet,
Yeah.
for anyone who is listening to this podcast, what are some key takeaways that you want them to take away from listening?
I think the biggest thing is if they're looking at being in the military, to look at all the issues involved with that. If they're going in for education, that's a really good reason. If they are just looking for just a better way of life, you can absolutely have that in the military. But to also look at the negative aspects, which, you know, deploying more often and those kinds of things, the possibility of being separated from your family, you know, to really weigh the pros and cons before they make that decision. Um, I want them to know that no matter what's happening in their lives, if something bad is happening in their lives, that to really, in time, they may really see that there's a positive that can come out of that. You know, all this suffering that I had for almost 30 years, you know, you look back and think, well, what's the positive of that? And honestly, I never would have found this technology that I can help people with without having gone through that. So that positivity is there. Um, and also to really note that their health's important. And if they can find more holistic ways to stay healthy, things like regular exercise, and I'm not talking about even doing anything strenuous. I mean, if you like to go to the gym and do everything, but honestly, you know, walking, doing some light weights a couple times a week, drinking quality water, trying to eat well, um, even if I follow the 80-20 rule, so 80% of the time I try to stay, you know, pretty much whole foods and, you know, fruit, vegetables, minimal fat, except for good fat. And 20% of the time I just do what I want. So we just went to Mexico on a vacation, took our children on vacation, and, you know, we were at an all-inclusive restaurant. I was not following the 80 part of my diet. But anyway, to try to focus on eating well and drinking quality water, supplementing if they need to, and just having a positive outlook on life. It's amazing if you realize what you have to be grateful for in life, that can really affect your mood and your health. So those kinds of things to work on. That's what I would like to leave with people. If they're in a spot where they think the technology can help them, absolutely, I'd love to help them. But even if they just take away those healthy things to do, then I think I've done my job as a nurse.
Yes, I completely agree with that. And I also try to live by the 80-20 rule. I always tell people I'm not going to give up wine. So that's my 20% right there.
There you go. There might have been a little tequila in Mexico, just a little bit.
I mean, I feel like you have to have some when you're in Mexico, right?
Yeah, it's kind of the thing, unless you really don't like tequila. But yeah, it's in almost every drink, it seems like.
It's very true. Well, Janet, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day and sharing your expertise, sharing your journey. I hope people do reach out, because it sounds like this technology is definitely beneficial. I know a lot of doctors are trying to not prescribe opioids because of how addicting they are. So if you are trying to find a holistic approach, please reach out to Janet. She sounds like she knows what she's talking about, and she could get you on that right path. So again, thank you so much, Janet. And if anyone has any questions, please let us know. Until next time, we will talk to you soon.
Thank you so much, Brittany.